Let's pray. Father God, we come before you today in this new year, asking that you bless this council and all who are engaged in the work of local government. Grant that we may order all things in wisdom, righteousness, with integrity, with peace, to the well-being of every resident of our city, and to the honour of your name and the good of everyone who resides here. Amen. Amen. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Clark, fellow councillors, management, members of the Fourth Estate who are here. At the outset, I wish you a very happy and productive and, let's pray, peaceful new year. We've been blessed already this year with amazing rains. But as we know, those of us who have read the reports from our engineering departments, despite all the rain which has held, which has fallen, our dams are still only sitting at 28.97% full, and so they have risen only 4%. I think that many residents are confounded by that. I don't know, councillors, whether you've got input through social media, but I've even had residents say to me, why aren't you lifting water rationing, given all the rains that have fallen? And there is an assumption from residents that because of all the rain, that our dams have somehow miraculously filled out dramatically, and we know that that isn't the case. We know that we need a lot more rain, but I fear that that relatively low amount of rainflow is also a direct result of the rampant illegal gold panning. I inspected the catchment of Umzingwane on Saturday morning, and as we know, last week we had extensive rain. And councillors, I was shocked because most of the small rivers were not running on Saturday morning when I inspected. And the reason is because much of this water has gone into the trenches that have been constructed. And so once again, we have to appeal to central government to enforce the laws that it passed last year, banning illegal gold panning, and we ask that they particularly focus on our catchment areas. While I dwell on water, since we last met, that is the town clerk, Director of Engineering Services, Mr. S. Ngube, and I attended the Africa Investment Forum in Rabat, Morocco, with a view to seeking funding for the new glass block dam. And whilst that funding is not fully secured, it was a highly successful meeting. We were very favorably received by the Africa Investment Forum. There are indications of support of some 93 million of the 99 million that the consortium needs to raise. And that has been followed up by very constructive meetings with government. The town clerk and engineer Ngube had a very constructive meeting with government just before Christmas. And there is a follow-up meeting to that this coming week in Harare, where it is hoped that the final water offtake agreement will be signed. Glass block is not going to resolve our short-term water needs, but it remains a critical component in our medium-term plans to secure water. But until that happens, and until, for example, we are able to rehabilitate the pipeline from Insiza and Mchabez, the situation, as we all know so painfully, on the ground is that the 133-hour water shedding program remains in place. And at this stage, unfortunately for the residents of the city, I have to say emphatically that that's not going to change. We pray, and I hope that everyone joins me in praying, that the rains that we have experienced in the last 2 weeks will continue through January, February, and March, but it is literally going to take sustained rains like that to refill our dams. Turning to other issues, I want to make particular mention of some of the programs that we were involved in 2024, just to remind us of some of our achievements. As you all know, we were selected as one of the 100 cities in the world to implement the Bloomberg Philanthropic Youth Climate Action Fund, which has been implemented successfully. We have been asked to follow up on that with a further application for a further fund this year, and our management team has worked on that. We have also submitted an application to the Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge for the rehabilitation of the intersection of Jason Moyo and 8th Avenue, which was, as you know, a resolution of this council that goes back to 1996. And we hope that if we are successful in that application this year, we might make that the pedestrianisation of the intersection of Jason Moyo and 8th Avenue a reality. We've had a successful time in the African Mayoral Leadership Institute program, and I need to stress to councillors that it was our participation in that played a critical role in the invitation to Rabat in Morocco in December. We were one of only 6 cities throughout Africa invited to apply for funding. And that was largely due to the very close collaboration that we've had coming out of the Amali Mayors Institute, and in particular, our association with the Big Win Philanthropic Organization, which has close ties with the African Development Bank and which facilitated the invitation of myself, the town clerk, and Director Ngube. We also participated and hosted the International Municipality BRICS Forum. The Deputy Mayor participated on my behalf in that. And we were selected as one of 12 cities in the world, and the only city in Africa that won a grant under the UCLG City of Valongo Participation for All program. This grant focuses on technical assistance through training in order to improve stakeholder participation. As we face the new year, aside from water, there are critical issues that still confront us that need to consume our energies this year, in particular the issue of our sewage plants, which are still operating way below their designed capacity. And on top of that, we have the ongoing issue of informal vendors in the city. Just shortly prior to this meeting, the town clerk raised this issue with me. There is a growing perception, in fact it's more than just a perception, it is a growing reality of increased lawlessness in our cities, with vendors springing up throughout the city. And this is going to undermine our ability to project our city as a smart, transformative city, as our logo says that our goal is. We understand the plight of vendors. We understand the plight of unemployed people. And that is why, through the Town Planning Department, Director, it is critical that your white paper be dealt with urgently this year, so that we resolve as a council this year on a plan of action to develop markets in the city, which will address this issue of informal vendors. But the reality is that we cannot allow this trend to continue. We have to make provision for vendors, and at the same time, we need to stamp out lawlessness if we are going to restore the rule of law and order generally to our city. Tied to this is the unfortunate reality that our city's finances remain utterly precarious. I've been advised today that as of the end of December 2024, the city is owed some Zimbabwe ZiG dollars 964 million. And as we all know, in addition to that, the macroeconomic environment further impedes service delivery. When people don't pay their rates, we are unable to adequately provide services for residents. And it is a catch-22. And we understand, for example, why some residents who are only getting water 133 hours a week are saying, why should we pay for water that often isn't delivered to us? We understand the plight. But if people don't pay their legitimate water bills, we do not have the resources that we need to maintain our existing water delivery services, to purchase the chemicals that we need to purify water, for example. And so my appeal, and I know that you all join me in this, fellow councillors, is that we appeal to residents to dig deep. We understand that they are facing economic challenges, major economic challenges, but we need to see this as a collective exercise. We are all in this together. And if we don't all pull together, we will not be able to transform our city. And a critical component of that is the payment of our rates and water bills. Just to conclude my remarks, as we look forward to this year, and it follows on from this theme, really, we need a multi-stakeholder approach. At the end of last year, for example, we had a meeting with CZI regarding a revision of our budget, and that is an ongoing exercise. But that meeting is an illustration of the fact that we do not operate in a bubble. We're not in a vacuum. We need to work closely with residents' associations. We need to work closely with business associations. We need to work closely with our international partners who are trying to assist us, for example, in the water area. And it is going to be only through that collective exercise, with mutual respect on both sides, that we can forge a common and an agreed strategy to tackle the almost overwhelming problems that we face as a city. And so we ask everyone to collaborate. I've spoken about vendors. We speak about transporters and the operators of bus companies. Please, can we pull together and respect our bylaws and respect the basic rights and dignity of all residents? That is what bylaws are about. Bylaws are not there to punish people. Bylaws are there to ensure the smooth, efficient governance of the city. But they only work if we all pull together. They only work if we all respect the letter and spirit of all our laws. With those few words, I repeat what I said at the beginning. I pray for God's blessings on each one of you, on our residents and on our city. And I pray that in this coming year, despite the challenges, we might overcome them and take our city to a better place. Siyabonga.
Thank you, Your Worship, the Deputy Mayor and the Councillors of the City of Bulawayo, management and staff and also ladies and gentlemen from the media, and indeed our esteemed stakeholders. The legal copy being confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 4th of December 2024, attached as Annex A, pages A to U. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I move that we adopt those minutes. Is there a seconder?
Signed, Your Worship.
Thank you. Got a pen. Right, let's move on to item 2. Chair of the Future Water Suppliers. Would you move your report?
She was not there.
Your Worship, I move that the report of the Future Water Suppliers and Water Action Committee, meeting held on the 3rd of December 2024, as submitted, be received and the various recommendations contained then be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Thank you. Is there any debate? Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mine is item 1. Under Chavez and Mzingwane, it talks about that the pump for Mzingwane is expected to be completed by 2025. So we are faced with serious water challenges. I would like to find out from the committee how far are we with meeting our timeline, since we are already towards the end of January, where we are expected to have the pump to have been completed. Then secondly, there is a call to action that was made on 1st of November 2023 by His Excellency President Idim Nangwaka, where he talked about no compromise to service delivery in his call to action. And secondly, the same call to action has been reaffirmed by Honorable Minister Garo. We are expected to have a master plan that is going to incorporate about 10,000 households or more in our master plan, where we are seeing residents that are within 40-kilometer radius of Bulawayo, even though they don't belong to Bulawayo. Under the master plan, they are supposed to be incorporated to the city of Bulawayo. It took us about over 100 years to have 136,156 households that we are building currently. But within the next maybe few months, we are supposed to incorporate more than 10,000 households. So, and you are already faced with water crisis. So I'd like to find out again from the committee and the council at large, our rate is, since our people who are already under the city of Bulawayo are facing water challenges, but we are going to be having more than 10,000 households that we are adding to the city of Bulawayo. So if the committee may answer our readiness towards providing those people with water, because we don't want to have a situation where we are incorporating households, but we are not able to give them water. It's certainly going to be a disaster in the city, because the urban areas are supposed to have water and sewer functioning. So if you are not able to give those social amenities and service delivery, it means that it's going to be a disaster. So my question is, how ready are we as council under the Committee of Future Water to provide these expected households with water? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. My contribution is on item 4. I think the report indicates that the Inyankuni pump station was supposed to be completed in December. I'd like to find out the progress on that. And also, secondly, the report indicates that well, in the medium term, we're supposed to put in place storage tanks from Kanwini and Woodville for high-lying areas. Because, Your Worship, there are many high-lying areas which have not had water. I know we don't have water, but it's especially worse in high-lying areas where you have places that have not received water for over 3 to 4 months. So I wanted to find out again progress on the storage tanks, Kanwini and Woodville, which would help especially residents in high-lying areas to receive water.
Thank you, Your Worship. Allow me to say Happy New Year to all. It is inevitable, Your Worship, to speak to the status of water resources in a year which has raised the hopes, as we have all seen. But you find that the expectation of some of the residents is that, like you correctly observed in your opening remarks, is that we should have lifted the water restrictions and the water shedding program. I faced the same question in my ward, and I had to explain that it is critically important to be guided by data, to be guided by information, to be guided by statistics of what is actually taking place in our dams. And besides, it is important to understand the types of rainfall. Sometimes you see fog, sometimes you see mist, low-lying clouds, and you think it is rainfall. That is one. Number two, there is also what we call light rainfall, which is just a drizzle, and there will be hardly any surface runoff when it rains, but people will be saying it is raining every day. What is going to fill our dams is what we call a deluge, a heavy downpour that actually swells our rivers and our dams. If I remember well, we have had 2 such heavy falls this year and taken from last year. So it is critically important that people understand that the inflows in our dams are not yet at the stage where we can lift the restrictions that they put in place. I was looking at the report of the future water. It is correctly capturing that the global total of our inflows is still below 30%. And I think it is advisable, therefore, that we do not rest on our laurels, we do not take our foot off the pedal in terms of our short, medium, and long-term strategies to try and improve the water resources for Bulawayo. Thank you very much.
Is there any further debate? Chair, would you like to respond?
Ngiyabonga Nkosi. I'll start with the item 1 by uKhonsela Umpume ngama pumps emzingwane. Engakutsho ukuthi ucontractor kade ku site namuhla ezama ukutesta, kodwa ke umsebenzi wonke uzabe usuphelile by next week ngeTuesday. Okuningi siza kudiscussa ku counseling committee because ku technical. Especially ngombuzolwane liukhulume ngokuthi si ready okungakanani. Siza kudiscussa ku counseling committee. Then Councillor Nkomo item 4 nge-issue yemganwini le Woodville ku 2025 budget yethu la ku procurement plan yethu. Ngiyabonga Nkosi.
Thank you. I think just as a conclusion, I want to reiterate some of the comments I made before. You will have noted the statement that I issued just slightly before Christmas, dealing not just with the dam levels, but also with the state of ZESA supplies of power. And those of us who attended the engineering committee just before Christmas I know that they shared my shock when we were told that in Chabez, for example, pump station, had not had ZESA power for 8 days. And when our key pump stations have no ZESA whatsoever, it logically follows that no water is pumped to Ngema. And once you have an 8-day hiatus like that, you get a deficit, you get arrears, and residents do not appreciate that we face, it's an ironic phrase to use, it's a perfect storm. It is a perfect storm of low dam levels, low ZESA supplies, terrible inflows because of gold panning. And we now have to deal with all of these factors working together. These are no excuses for us, but they are a factual reality. And it's very important that we as councillors convey that to residents, to explain that we face these challenges and quite frankly, with the best will in the world, from our management, from our workers, it is very difficult to deliver services in that context. But can we move this report? Item 3 on the agenda. Where is it? Report of the
Your Worship, I move that the report of the Health, Housing and Education Committee meeting held on the 12th of December 2024 as submitted be received and the various recommendations therein contained be adopted.
Could I have a second? Debate.
Thank you, Worship. Mine is item 2 if there is no one.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Worship. Mine is item 1B, waste management. Yes, we have got a challenge, especially from Ward 8, where I come from. We have got these small trucks which collect refuse and dump it at the center of the residential houses of residents. Then it takes the whole day for the bigger truck to clear Tungo's mine, and thereby it is creating health hazard to the residents of Nguboyenja especially. And we have raised this, I think, many times, and we promised last year that the department shall deal with it. Up to today, as the councillor there, the residents feel that I'm not doing enough. We are not telling the department to do something about it. Therefore, my question is, when is the department intending to relocate that station of dumping the refuse at Nguboyenja?
Okay, thank you, Worship. Mine is item 2 under water quality. I'd like to thank the Department of Health for testing our water, which have been causing some challenges to our communities. I see that 48% of the tested samples for bacteriological analysis were unsatisfactory. It is quite concerning that 48% is almost close to half of the quantity that was tested, or half of the areas that were tested. So which means half of our population in the city of Bulawayo is faced with a threat of waterborne diseases. So I'd like to find out what is the Department of Water and Sanitation doing to make sure that these results that were found by the health department, what are we doing to make sure that we correct the situation? Because as it is, we are having 50% of our people or our water sources being contaminated with the findings that are coming out from the health department. Thank you.
Thank you. What item?
Item 2.
Item 2.
On the Health Inspectorate, I'd like to appreciate the work of the Health Inspectorate. On your report, it says there were 9 intimations for various violations in terms of compliance. And my question is, if you walk between First Avenue to 6th, the number of violations that you just see with your naked eyes in terms of people selling food from anywhere and everywhere at any time, all the time, is shocking. And yet we've only managed to record 9 intimations in terms of our report. So it means other people that comply, and it's mostly small businessmen who comply. It means for them, they're wasting their time by complying, or by being licensed, by adhering to council bylaws. So it's actually undermining business confidence in the city if we allow so much illegal activity to happen. So I'd like to urge the committee to accelerate enforcement, accelerate the inspections, because I'm not a health expert, but just by taking a casual walk around the city between 1st to 6th Avenue, you will be shocked. And yet we only managed to record and penalize about 9 institutions for various offences. I feel we can do more. So I'm always on enforcement. Let's enforce, otherwise this city will become lawless, and legitimate small to medium businesses will collapse because of the cost of compliance, whilst other people who don't comply get away with it.
Any further debate?
Move the report, Your Worship.
Well, let me give the chair an opportunity to respond.
I can say all the concerns have been taken into consideration, and we are going to look into them as a committee. For the community trackers and dumping, I think the expectation is that the garbage is moved directly from the community tracker as to the BCC removal trucks. We are not expecting that that can be offloaded to a certain dumping area, because as a city we don't have dumping areas. So I think there is an omission there. The expectation is that from the community tracker directed to the BCC refuse truck. So we are going to look into that. Then the issue of contaminated water. That needs a collaborated approach from the 2 committees, the Water and Sanitation and the E-Healthy Committee. We have deliberated about the issue several times as a committee, and we suggested to have a meeting, a Healthy Committee together with the Water and Sanitation Committee to map a way forward. Then for the city issue of intimations, I think we agree that we are going to continue trying to reinforce that as a city we adhere to the bylaws. And also the other issue which can address this is maybe the issue of staffing. As it is now, we have only 2 supervisors for the whole city. So the issue of staffing, the issue of resources is also affecting us as a committee. Thank you.
Can we move the report?
Move.
Let's move to our next item. The chair of the Environmental Management Engineering. The chair has given his apologies, so to the deputy chair.
Komiti lezemvelo kanye lemsebenzi yobunjinela wawukhona mhla zima-17 kuMpalakazi ngomnyaka we-2024 wamukelwe, njalo izincomo zonke ezikhona kumbiko zamukelwe yile indlu. Ngiyabonga.
Debate. Will the debate be even longer than the opening remarks?
Yeah, I think there is a head to there.
Item 1, Who's got a no? Item 2, item 1? Item 1. Councillor, you have the floor.
Ngiyabonga Nkosi. Bengithanda ukuthi ngibuze uchairman wale committee ukuthi sinanzelela ukuthi uBulawayo khathesi uphakathi kohlupho lokuthi impahla yethu iyaphela ngokutsha. Sinanzelela ukuthi izinto sesizisebenzisa ngemva kwe-load shedding. Sisebenzisa amakhandlela, sisebenzisa amagas. Izindlu ziyatsho uBulawayo wonke. Mzamo bani eliwenzayo ukuthi kube lokufundiswa kwabantu emalokitshini ukusebenzisa lezi zinto ngoba uhlupho lwamagetsi lukhona. Abantu sebetshintshile ukusebenzisa amagesi akusela, sesisebenzisa inkuni, sesisebenzisa amakhandlela, amagasi, izindlu ziyatsha. Lizabe ligijima lizocitsha kumbe kukhona elikuzamayo ukufundisa uBulawayo?
Thank you, Worship. Mine is item 2, table 1.2, where it shows us about talks about the water leaks that were attended and that were carried forward. I've got a concern, Your Worship, that people don't get water where we are coming from. But the table there shows that in the month of November 2024, we had 188 outstanding leaks that were not attended. It was just water that was oozing and gushing out to the nearby areas or bushes. While this as council and committee concerned, we are not taking action to attend to those leaks. 188 unattended leaks is not a joke, Your Worship. Is you have seen in our various reports that we've got about 45% to 48%, which is almost close to 50% of non-revenue water that is lost due to water leakages. But we are saying people don't have water. My assumption is that maybe if we have lost about half of the water that we had, that was treated, surely by now people should not be suffering or we should not be having water challenges. Where we are coming from, especially maybe from my end, we had gone for almost 2 months without water in Mkanini, and the people are coming out on us as council, and what are we doing? But we have got reports before us that shows that we are carrying forward 188 leaks which are not attended in non-revenue water about 50%. So I would like to ask from the committee, what are we doing as a committee and as council to make sure that we attend to those things? Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Number 3? 3. Okay, Councillor.
Item 3 ngisukumele indaba yamasuwa. Indaba yamasuwa Nkosi, I don't know department leyo including abakhokheli bayo ukuthi lisizamelani. We have been reporting about amasewers emalokitshini kithi lapho esisuka khona. Ama residents each and every day ukudrive through Enketha nje ukungena ubingelelwa isuwa. Siya reporters sithole ama reference numbers. Ama reference numbers lawa sesilawo more than A1 in the 6 reference numbers. Since last year November lokho angaka attend. Ngicela ukubuza ukuthi kuhamba njani lisicasisele ngoba even ama offices ama directors we call them, they don't answer our calls. Siyabafonela bekuthumela ama picture besisuka ku meeting. Uthi ukuthi meeting yezakhamizi leyenza ukuthi beyenze leyo meeting bayisola bayidelela njani izakhamizi. Izakhamizi they are not happy. Sebebone ngani thina councillor ithe sihlokozayo ama sewage. So sicela lisi-attendele into leyo kuthiwa yisuwa ekobulawayo. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I want to take note of perhaps the situation that is obtaining at Lake Chivero in Harare. And then I want to transpose that situation with what is going on in Bulawayo. We have the Umkuza River in Bulawayo. We have sewer effluent that is being discharged into that river. And my concern right now to the engineering committee is that, fine, we have this effluent which is being discharged into that river, and we are all aware that samples are taken from that river, and those samples show that a lot of effluent is present in that river. I am sure that this river in question has got aquatic life and so on. And as a city, we have a responsibility of ensuring that we don't just discharge effluent into any river. We have a responsibility of ensuring that the rivers within our city, within our vicinity, are all safe, and they are all rivers where aquatic life is guaranteed and in good health. So what I would like to know from the committee is that what is the position of the committee in terms of taking care of that aquatic life and ensuring that projects that have been outstanding for a long time, like the deep section, are actually attended to, and then we ensure that the aquatic life in our rivers within the city is actually not compromised by this act of discharging raw sewage effluent, which may actually result in us maybe being penalized by regulatory authorities.
Thank you.
Siyabonga Nkosi. Kusema item na item 3. February. Nasukuma lapha ngikhuluma ngezikhalazo eze-Counterpart pertaining isuwa. Counterpart more than 10,000, around 10,000 households gazina sewer. Isuwa is like ngama-play toilets. Last year I reported here in this house to say ama-play toilets sector, they are full. So up to now, as the Council of Bulawayo, I will have the SES. So when the committee we use our code ukuthi ulungisa indaba le. Last year in July, ama-residents bacela i-Department of Engineering ukuthi ibuye eCounterpart ngoba bona sebezifisele ukuthi bezifundele ama-sections abo to fund ukuthi kube lesuwa. Residents are willing to subscribe towards isuwa eCounterpart. So the engineering department came. Up to now, they are failing to produce a bill of quantity. Just a quotation to say this section will cost us so much for us to have isuwa. So in terms of the department lay, we occupy ukuthi sivika abantu information. What is the problem? Abantu nxa besithi bona sicela ukuthi sincedise. Understand ukuthi council ilokuzima okwakhathesi. But we have our own monies to pay towards that service. But we are failing them. Ngokubanika just information ukuthi la bazali ufunakala ukuthi sithenge ama-pipes emali engaka. Residents are ready for that. I reported that last year, but nothing has been done. So our residents eCounterpart sebezibuza ukuthi do they belong to Bulawayo or something else? So sicela i-department leyo isikhangelele ukuthi kuyini okuhluphayo kumbe bebuya abantu be-counterpart lapho sibachasisele ukuthi kuyini okuhluphayo ukuthi sibanike i-quotation nje ukuze indawo leyana ibe lamasuku. As we speak now, ama-black toilet ayageleza emgwaqo nesuku. So sicela kukhangele lokho i-department leyo iyefika e-counterpart mhlawumbe babe bekhuluma bengakwazi e-counterpart. Thank you.
That's it.
Ngiyabonga Nkosi. Mina ngise-IT 3. Mina njengokhansila lohlupho lwamasuwa ngibona ngani ikomiti yelokhuzeni yemasuwa kimi sebethe sebedlulekile. So isicelo sethu njengezakhamizi sibesithi njengoba sebethe sebedlulekile kuyahlala kunje kuthuthuma. Sibesicela ukuthi i-department ibuye izositshengisa ukuthi singagebha njani ukuthi njengoba behlelile isuwa liyana ingabi flooded, at least ibe ne-way yokuthi ibihamba. Njengoba ukhanya ngani banjeni ukuthi khona councillor lapha vele kuyahlala kunje. Babuya sibili ukubuya ku-ground but kuzahlala kunje asikwazi ukuthi kuze kuthini. So abantu bona they are saying bona abantu khona kuyahlala kunje. So thina sithi njengezakhamizi sicela ukuthi isuwa liyana ingabi flooded, at least sibe lama-trenches. So kuyabe sokufuna ukuthi abaworks kumbe babazogebha kumbe thina njengezakhamizi besitshele ukuthi besidwebele ukuthi sigebhe ngaphi kwenzela ukuthi isuwa liyana ithole i-way of out than ukuthi ibe flooded. So isicelo sami njengobani thina njenge-city council sesiyehlulekile ukuthi isuwa simanage. So ngibona ngani uBulawayo wonke ingakhangelelanga kuwadi yami oward level but ngibona ama-wards wonke nxa lapho ufika khona ngamasuwa. So baba Nkosi ngicela ukuthi lawe ukuzinike isikhathi sokuthi ube le-tour ungene phakathi nanyako cela ukuthi kubuye emakhandeni uzobona lokhu ngangenayo kule yinye isuwa ehlala ithuthuma everyday asebandlela bona ukuthi khona le ayisozikwaniseki. So angazi ukuthi singayenza kanjani yabo.
What item, Council? 11? Anyone before 11? Okay, Councillor, and then I'll come to you.
Ngiyabonga Nkosi. Ngizathanda ukuchayela uchalimana le committee ihlombe ngomsebenzi abawenzileyo ku-item 11.2 drain clearing group community groups. Siyananzelela ukuthi last year bazinikela basebenza ngokuzikhandla beclear ama-storm drains ethu. Loba nje bakhona sebebhadaliwe bakhona bangakabhadalwa engilethemba lokuthi bazahlala ingungwana bakulungise kungekudala. Kodwa ke bese ngisithi nanti phela izulu lisembule amakhwapha okwenzakala phandle nxa izulu linile kuyesabisa amanzi nje amana agcwale yonke indawo. Bese ngisithi kule ikomiti lo Chalimani mhlawumbe bengaphinda bahlale phansi ngomnyaka ka2025 lwesesithe sawusungula bebe bacabange okudlula lokho abade bekucabangile ngo2024 bakulungise ngoba last year besingelayo phela izulu bekungakhanyi ngaleyo ndlela indlela esihlezi ngayo. Kodwa ke kubonakala ukuthi ama drain ethu amanga kahle. Ngilethemba lokuthi baza kulungisa. Isicelo sami ukucela ukuthi bahlale phansi beyikomiti bahlolisise ukuthi umsebenzi lo bengawubamba njani. Ngiyabonga Nkosi.
Thank you, Joseph. Still on the same item, we can see the proposed structure, but like the fellow councillor,
before the rain started affecting us. So it's a situation that we were not, we didn't foresee. So we now have not potholes, but dams in town. The CBD is actually something else. There is one by Robert Mkave and near, is it Giga Soramjis? That one is a dam on its own. It's not even a pothole. There is one by Fort, I think it's Fort or Main Street down there, or First Avenue or something. So can they actually, in their structure, I saw that a proposed plan, can they revisit their plan and actually maybe act on the CPD because it's our center of what? Of attraction and business. Then last, there was a full council that I spoke about solar lights. So we have portals where there are robots as well, and the robots are not working. So I think there will be so much chaos. So probably if we can have solar lighting, I think it will help us. We will go a long way to prevent and protect and save lives, because people are dying out there on a daily basis. There was a time during festive when Robert Mugabe the robots were not working for almost 2 weeks. And what was happening there on a daily basis was chaos. So probably if we can think along those lines as well, along trying to save people's lives, then we can go far.
Is there any further debate? Before I ask the Deputy Chair to respond, I want to make a couple of comments. Firstly, to deal with the issue of our sewage systems. As I mentioned in my preliminary remarks, our sewage facilities are operating at below 20% capacity right across the city. And to draw on what Councillor Moyo said, the comparison to Lake Chivero, the harsh reality is that we are currently pouring raw sewage into Umguza Dam. The only difference between Harare and Bulawayo is that we do not draw on that dam for water for our residents. But that should never be any excuse, because it remains a very serious health hazard for people living in the environs of the Umguza River. We need to be honest with ourselves as a council, and I think that Town Clerk and fellow councillors this year, when it comes to the sewage system, we need to set ourselves certain goals for the end of this year. And I'd like to just highlight those. Firstly, deep section. Deep section, as we know, is locked up in legal proceedings, arbitration proceedings, and I do not understand why those arbitration proceedings are taking so long. We need to get that arbitration matter heard and concluded one way or the other so that we have certainty on deep section, because my understanding is that if deep section is addressed, it will have a major impact. Secondly, we have the potential of a contract regarding ASLB 1, 2, and 3. A public-private partnership agreement. This has been a contract which has been debated this past year. That must be concluded. We need to do everything in our power to conclude that so that we can get ASLB 1, 2, and 3 addressed in the course of this year. Thirdly, we are aware of the discussions that we have had with the South African company Acumen. It is critical that we proactively follow up on that. This is a company which has been approved by the government of Zimbabwe, which has new technology that can save us money in the rehabilitation of our sewage processing. And so what I'm saying is, here we are in January 2025. We need to underline this debate that we've had this afternoon. There are other issues that we need to address with regard to sewage. But those issues, deep section, ASLB 1, 2, and 3, and the Acumen contract, there is no reason why we cannot expedite those so that we can make an impact. It's not going to resolve the problems completely, but we have to look for the low-hanging fruit. And that, in my view, is low-hanging fruit. Then finally, turning to the issue of roads. Like you, I feel utterly depressed when I drive on our streets. As overjoyed as I am about the rain, I know that as the rain falls, so it further destroys our roads. Because as we know, when water gets under tar, it completely erodes the tar. And that is what we're seeing right across our city. And it is the inevitable consequence of good rains. I'm also aware of the limited amount of money that we've received from Zenara and the limitations even on TTI money. And so we have very limited room in which to maneuver. But once again, and Chair of Finance, I look to your committee in particular. We have to study our budget closer. And turning to engineering, we need to reach agreement regarding how we can best use the limited resources we have. You know, Director, that I've expressed concern about spending $500,000 on building a new road when our existing roads are crumbling, our existing roads that actually have a lot more usage than some of these brand new roads that we've constructed, for example, in Thorngrove. And so we need to act smart with the limited resources that we've got. My own view, and I know I'm a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, so you have to take what I say with a pinch of salt. But it seems logical to me that if we've got a certain amount in our budget, that money must be used for early timiest pothole patching on existing roads so that at least our existing roads do not deteriorate. There's one other point, and I want to come to what Councillor Mabeza said. It is a critically important issue that you've raised, Councillor. It's one thing having a series of potholes. As we know, in many of our residential areas, there are so many potholes that you've got to rebuild the road. And you can't really drive quickly, and you're not going to lose any lives in that regard. But there are other potholes at critical intersections. If I could use an example from my own ward, at the intersection of Hillside Road and 23rd Avenue by the Bradfield shops, there is a feeder lane there where a pool has developed, and underneath that pool is now a huge donga. And so for the unsuspecting, they come around, they think this is a feeder lane, they don't have to worry about giving right of way to other traffic. They see the water, but if they go into that at speed, they could literally kill themselves. And it illustrates what Councillor Mabeza has said. And we have a role, councillors, to play in this regard. In the course of the next month, I encourage all of us to have a look at your own ward and identify the potholes that are dangerous. We can't repair all the potholes, but we must make it an absolute priority to repair the potholes which could cause loss of life. And we need to work closely with engineering in that regard. Councillors, because our engineers can't possibly know where all the danger sites are right across the city. It is up to us as councillors to work closely. Comes back to my preliminary remarks. We need to collaborate very closely with our roads department to say, and not to overwhelm them. We need to understand the limitations that they have, the financial limitations, the human resource limitations. But bearing that in mind, to identify in each of our wards where the very serious areas are, to submit it in writing, to have a discussion so that at the very least we can get those addressed. Councillor, I'll let you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. Right before the Vice Chair of the committee comes in, I'm also a member of the committee, and I believe I can assist with one or two. There has been very pertinent issues which has been raised before this House about fire. Somebody spoke about fire. If you scrutinize the report thoroughly, Your Worship, you'll understand that as a committee we have put it in black and white on the measures which we are doing to try to educate the public. That we are using various media platforms to make sure that residents are taught. Secondly, you'll understand that residents take long to report these fires. And by the time they will report, damage would have already been done. You will note that of late, lithium batteries have been the major cause of fire outbreaks in our homes. If you go again in that report, you will note that as a committee, we have put it also that we are also engaging the Financial Service Department to make sure that the number of fire brigade and ambulance is put on a water bill. It will assist residents in a very mighty way. Also, at the same time, it calls us as policymakers in our feedback meetings to educate our residents, to also spread the message to the residents. That was about fire. Then item number 3, which was also raised by Councillor Hove. I think it's critical to understand the history of Hlaranguhle Country Park. What is the history of Country Park Hlaranguhle? And why are we in that mess or in that challenge as a city? You will note, Your Worship, that when that project was put in place around year 2012, the city of Bulawayo sat down with the land beneficiaries of about 15,524 land beneficiaries of those estates. And they agreed on a $50 figure contribution every month to make sure that sewer, water, and roads are put in place. It was totaling to around $46,000 per month in terms of contributions. And this project was supposed to take 5 good years, Your Worship, from 2012 to 2017. But again, residents failed to contribute that $50, which prompted again Council to re-engage the beneficiaries and agreed on a figure of $15. If you scrutinize the report very well, Your Worship, you will understand that 75% of those land beneficiaries could not raise the $15 which was required per month. And the report is clear. The councillor is saying it's not true. So we don't know who is telling the truth or who is not telling the truth. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Councillor, before I come to the Deputy Chair, I just want to respond because I realise that I omitted to refer to Councillor Hove's comment regarding Cowdrey Park. And it is a critical issue. I apologise. It's a very important issue. Whatever the history is, it needs to be a focus for this year. We cannot have a suburb with such a huge population as Cowdrey Park. And we're going to have to work collectively to scrutinise our budget, our own resources, to try to make that a priority this year. I know that resources are tight, but I just wanted to acknowledge that, irrespective of what the history is, the fact of the matter is that it's an unacceptable situation. Deputy Chair, ma'am, I gave the Deputy Chair of the committee the opportunity to respond, but the trouble is I open up a Pandora's box. I'll ask the Deputy Chair to.
I think that Councillor Mabuto has summed up a number of things, but first and foremost, I have to raise the issue that in terms of fire prevention and awareness, we are doing a lot as a committee. I'm sure if you go through the report, you will note that we are doing fire prevention and awareness campaigns in various schools, various institutions of learning, and to various households. And also we are actually inspecting a number of fire hydrants to ensure that we as a committee, we are well equipped to respond to any fire outbreak. In terms of water leaks, I want to admit that we are as a city losing a lot of water due to non-revenue water. And as a committee, we have noted your concerns and we will address that. But our biggest challenge as a committee is procurement. The regulations that govern procurement of resources to fully respond to water leaks are limited. And therefore, our delays are around that issue of procurement, whether it's government or it's our own internal systems. In terms of sewer chokes, I agree with the councillor that a lot of residents are facing delays to sewer chokes. This is because the first issue is that our sewer roads, we don't have sewer roads as a committee. Now, in terms of the required amount of sewer roads, we need about 40 or so sewer roads at any given time. Currently, we have 10. And therefore, this is causing a lot of delays in terms of our response to sewer chokes. Secondly, our jetting machine, I must report before you, councillors, that our jetting machine is down. And therefore, where we have got sand trapping, where we need jetting machines, we can't respond to that because our jetting machine is down. And you need to, so therefore, as long as we don't address procurement, we can't address the sewer chokes that you are responding, you are reacting to. The other issue raised by Councillor Moyo, I think you are raising a pertinent issue, and as a committee we are worried about the delays in the deep sewer section project. As a committee, we are doing everything that is in our powers to ensure that that project is completed before the end of this financial year. The other issue raised by Councillor Wobe relates to Country Park. In the same report that we have presented before the House, we are saying there are measures that we are actually adopting as a committee to respond to challenges as they relate to Country Park, particularly the issue of servicing of those stands in Country Park. But one of the things that we have to take note of is that Country Park, phase 1 to 15, were self-financing schemes, self-servicing schemes. And therefore, as a committee, we are now saying that since we have adopted phase 1 to 15, there are some mechanisms that we are coming up with in partnership with various financial institutions to respond to servicing needs in Country Park. I'm sure that you are responding to the issues that have emanated from the recent rains, the La Nina effect, which is actually befallen us as a city. I'm sure you are responding to the roads, the sewer, and so on. But definitely, if you look closely, if you actually read that report, we are responding to the issues raised by Hlalali residents. And as a council, we will respond to every need ekhona ebahlalini bako Bulawayo, particularly abahlali base Country Park lalapho engihlala khona lami. And then also sewer chokes, yes, councillor, ama sewer chokes, I think there's a councillor who raised issues about sewer chokes. Yes, lokhu ngakurepeata la ngesintu. Kule mqwayi leyani yokuhlokoza amasuwa liyayibona ecazimula. That thing ifuna procurement, and currently procurement ithi khona kumele siwait for ama processes ayenziwayo ukuze kutholakale imqwayi yokuhlokoza. So imqwayi yokuhlokoza nxa ingekho amajaha lamantombazana avela ku department ye water and sewer sanitation angabuya engela mqwayi liyana, they are useless on the ground. Singaba le need yokuthi si respond, singaba lesifiso, but as long imaterial ingekho akulanto enjani engahamba kwamphala. So we are saying ukuthi as long as the procurement ingekho kungayizwa procurement, we can't respond to amasuwa effectively. But lathi lapho esihlala khona njenge committee water environment and engineering siyakubona khona ukuthi kuyas affecta njengedolobho. Kumugca wechumi lanye kukhulunywa ngedrain kukhulunywa ngedrain clearing. I-drain clearing ngiyabonga ukuthi uCouncillor uyayiraise ukuthi iyezwe kuhle ngomnyaka ophelileyo. Kodwa it's up to you as councillors ukuthi sithi allocate more resources ukuze sikhave indawo enjani enkulu. As long as njenge-council singallocateanga more resources, we can't expect ukuthi drain clearing le izaba njani, izaba ngcono iye phambili khona. So with that said, ngizagoqa-ke ngikhulume ngama-potholes. As a committee sanika ikampani itender lokuthi livala ama-pothole e-CBD, kodwa lalingela capacity, and we have cancelled that. So we need a company ele-capacity ukuthi ivala ama-potholes ngaphi e-CBD e-town. Ngesindebele kuthiwa kuse-town. Now, so that company yayingela capacity. So as long as kungelama-company amalutshwane ale-capacity afuna ukuthi enjani ayenze umsebenzi lo, sabe sile-challenge njenge-committee. Okugcina uCouncillor Mabeza raise a very important issue eyama-solar lights. Councillor Mabeza, as a committee, kunengi okulethiweyo ngama-company ayehlukeneyo afuna ukuyenza i-solar lighting ngoBulawayo. Njengomnyango owezemvelo lokunjinela sikukhangele khonokho, and they will report back to this house ukuthi sesiyezeni ngendaba zakhona. Ngiyabonga Nkosi.
Councillor, I'm going to use my prerogative to allow you, but if I allow you to speak, can you keep it short, because we should move the report. But you clearly have something pressing in your mind.
Because asikaqedi phela andigcine ku-11 mina ngiya ku-12 item 12 ngibona kuripoti lapha egodini project Nkosi ungathi uBulawayo simcikizela phansi momo.
I'm going to suggest, Councillor, that we deal with this in committee.
No, it's here.
I understand that, but we had finished the item, and so I'm going to equally exercise my prerogative to suggest that we dealt with the committee. Can we move the report, please?
Move.
Thank you. Chairman Netta. Townlands.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the report of the Townlands and Planning Committee, meeting held on the 16th of December 2024, as submitted, be received and the various recommendations contained therein be adopted. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Any debate? Item what? 11. Is there anything before 11? Speak now or forever hold on.
Very office.
Okay. Item number 11. Thank you.
Going through the report, I saw a lot of applications for later bishops. I don't have much of a problem about later bishops, but I think if we can find one application where someone is asking to build a mall in Bulawayo to show development. No, later bishops, okay, they create employment. They are somehow sustaining people in their households, but it won't come out right. So can we be balancing later shops? Because now shops are closed, big shops are closing because of the competition in later shops. And it's now a challenge because we are becoming a small city of China or something in Bulawayo. Can we just look at the broader picture of Bulawayo and maintain some dignity within our city? I'm not saying later shops are not dignified, but I'm saying at least it's tunes in a councillor on love. So we still need our dignity within us. So I don't know, but
It's a very valid point, Councillor. Is there further debate?
Move, Your Worship.
Councillor Mabuto is obviously hungry. I just want to, in all seriousness, I want to reinforce the point made. The problem, can we have one meeting, please? One meeting, please. Can we respect each other? Councillor Mbezo, the point that you raise is a valid one. The problem is that we work within the context of the macroeconomic environment. The issue that you raise is of deep concern to me. I'm sure it's of deep concern to all of us. But I think we have to look to other measures to encourage the larger traditional operations to survive, and yet not stifle those who want to facilitate small operators such as this. Councillor.
Thank you, Roshi. I'm not standing here to shoot down my colleague councillor's proposal, but I'm standing here for us to perhaps have a broader view of the global trends and economic developments, especially in our region. When we look at what has happened nationally, you find that the big businesses have tended to suffer a lot in terms of profitability, and the economy is sort of migrating towards the small businessmen. The big industries have gone down the drain. The big commercial entities have gone down the drain, and a lot of people who have been thrown out of those giant concerns have had to eke out a levy, and this means to say they cannot afford big capital injection into big business, and all they can afford is perhaps to rent a small shop or maybe a bay so that they can, earn a livelihood. It's quite a brilliant idea what she's saying, but I think, like she correctly puts it, we need to balance the small men, the sole trader, and the informal traders, so that they don't lose out in eking out a living.
Thank you, Councillor. I would rather have people in this type of establishment where we can get rates and licenses paid than the lawlessness on the streets. But it comes back, Director of Town Planning, this has to be integrated with the proposal for markets as well. That's the balance that we need to achieve. We need to achieve law and order in the city. And one of the ways of achieving law and order, ironically, Councillor Mabeza, is actually through these small lettable malls. But it's a balance. Councillor. What item?
Kusame item 11. Ngizathanda ukuthi ngikhulume iqiniso lami. Zonke koBulawayo ama-lettable shops mina angiwazwisisi. Abantu bayenza inzuzo ngoba umnotho welizwe uyantenga. Konke lokho siyaku-understanda, siyakuzwisisa singumphakathi. Kodwa ke thina silidolobha elikhulu kangaka. So kuphanga ugcwala indawo yonke ngani ngamakhowa lana sesidulini izulu lilinhle. I think kumele a committee chairperson libe lendlela. We're not saying ukuthi ama-lettable shops as she said asiwafuni. Akube lendlela yokuwa ukuthi gabe ngapi design anti yini town planning ukuthi kumbe lithi abangale emuva phandle kumbaba semarket kumbaba kumatopos hayi yonke ndawo nje upho ukuthi ingani yilokhu zena ngithi ngikho engufisa ukuthi ngakuba njalo I'm not sure ilizwe esakopakilo cause engunanzelela ukuthi asosiko lethu sikukopile. I'm not a member of town planning, apologies. Asosiko lethu ele town ama-lettable shops sikukope kwenye indawo besingelakho vele. Ekukukopeni kwethu angikhosha ukuthi umuntu ohamba wakopa wabamba kahle. kumbe waphonga ukubuya nama-late bishops athi kumele kube kupartition uBulawayo wonke. You find indawo elamazenge yonke uthi bekwazi ukuthi after 1 week uzathola sokuyimkoto elamaglasi ilamazenge yonke after 1 week kusela Bulawayo. Let's bring back uBulawayo. Ngike ngavakatshela eJohannesburg eSouth Africa ngomunye umnyaka. Ule khonkelo ngama-late bishops ngakuthola kwenye indawo kuthiwa ngu-Small Street. Ugodwa le. Then nxa ufuna ukuya etown uyazihambela edorobheni ubona idorobho. Ngiyabonga Nkosi.
I shall comment before the chair and the member will comment.
What item, Councillor?
The similar item on lettable shops.
Item 11.
To me, Your Worship.
Councillor Mabeza, do you see what can of worms?
To me, Your Worship, this is according to me. You have to get me right. Yeah, Councillor Mohammed said to suit me, yes. Lettable shops, Your Worship, let's understand. How are these lettable shops coming up? Who is coming to ask for these developmental permits to do lettable shops? I want to give you a good example of what is happening in town. The 2 buildings which belong to Edgar's, a big clothing company, right, closed, right, and decided to rent out their buildings, whatever, if they own the buildings, for these lettable shops. You go to Edgar's Main, that one, you go to Edgar's Trade Gold, you go to Choppies, former Choppies, yes. And if you go inside Choppies, they are state-of-art lettable shops. Very excellent, Your Worship. What are the advantages of these lettable shops, Your Worship? 1, employment creation to the city. 2, infrastructure improvement in the city. Because some of the buildings, Your Worship, they were an eyesore. And now they're getting improved by putting these lettable shops. But of course, we must make sure that these lettable shops are done with quality material to make them lookable, to make them attractive.
And
I want to thank the person who copied this model in China. China is one of the world's greatest economies. If China is functioning and improving its economy through that, we have to understand, Your Worship, the basis where our economy is.
We're not in China.
You see, and as council, we are now supposed to take advantage of this lettable shop to follow each and everyone who is in this lettable shop, whether they are properly licensed, and make money out of that. It's an advantage to us, Your Worship, to improve our coffers, to improve service delivery in the city of Bulawayo. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I think Councillor Mabuto.
Let's give Councillor.
Councillor Mabuto is two-sided because he runs a lettable shop. I'm a lettable shops. I think we cannot avoid them now. But I want to suggest that let's have a standard plan. And let's move slowly. Like let's have an area where we start as an example and move slowly. But having one standard plan that will give a very good image to Bulawayo, right? I think if we do it that way, goes right. Then he spoke up of Edgar's. You will find Edgar's probably 1,000 square meters. Then we go there and squeeze 50 lettable shops there, where there is one toilet.
Yeah.
I think we are servicing and so the department here planning must sit down, come up with proper plan. If it means to come and show us the plans that you guys have suggested, then we say, oh, this is nice. This is bad. We agree with Bulawayo emenjani. And for now, I think singaqalisa nge certain area, approve siya phambili. I think it's right. So that sichiye enye indawo isasele ubuntu bethu kancane. While this is integrator to new things. Sikambe kancane kancane. Singabi clams. Thank you.
Before I give the Deputy Mayor the floor to respond as Deputy Chair of this committee.
As a member.
As a member. Councillor Mabeza, I said that you opened a can of worms, but I think it was a very useful can of worms. And for me, the debate that has happened should be the essence of this council. This has been a very constructive, productive debate where both sides of the argument have been placed in rational terms. And it seems to me that there's an emerging consensus. We need to understand world trends. If you look in America, for example, companies like Walmart are struggling. With the advent of Amazon, those old traditional stores are battling, even in an economy like the United States. And even in our own city, it's a different city, it's a different economy to what it was 40 years ago. Haddon and Sly went ages ago. And Sanders, if you recall Sanders, went ages ago. And we have to move with the times. But the points that have been made by in the last two contributions, I think are the critical things. We can't stop lettable shops, but they must be built to an acceptable standard. That they must pay their licenses. That there must be adequate fire controls. So town planning, it's a critical thing. We need to work out the minimum size. That point that you made about Edgar's, 1,000 square meters and one toilet, and now 50. And that is the final point, fire and toilets. And that must govern our approvals rather than the bigger decision of whether to have lettable shops or not. Yes, we'll have lettable shops, but they must operate within that environment. But thank you. I'm going to turn to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I am the member of the committee. Yes, thank you, fellow councillors, for the concerns which we have raised. And as a committee, we have debated this. We have also raised these concerns before. We are also worried that we are not attracting big businesses. People want to construct malls or want to construct skyscrapers. But nevertheless, we receive the applications for the lettable shops. And again, these applications are from the people who already own that piece of land, who owns that building, who just want to partition. If you remember very well, we had 2 or 3 months last year where these applications were not coming to the full council because we had stopped them as the committee. We are saying, let us review the policy on lettable shops. And that policy was brought before this council worship. Naturally, if you want to deny a human being information, you give him the information in writing. You don't give him by the word of mouth. If you give someone information by the word of mouth, yes, he will get it. But if you give him in writing, there is a problem. It was brought here, the policy was reviewed, and it was passed. That is why we now have these applications coming. They are based on the new policy which was passed by this council unit, Your Worship. I thank you. I think the chairperson shall add.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chair, would
They summed it up, your GM, they summed it up. We welcome everyone. You are free to do that in Bulawayo. Everyone is welcome. But the only thing of the CNS is which is planning to Tina, we permit, we give permission. And then after that, says we give permission there. So Sydney Agama department, such as health, yes, I can which it so we went hand in hand, the management department. And then the other thing is, not only in Zimbabwe, in Africa. Outside our industry, our industry say we don't have the shops, but I assure you, this is a winter.
Okay,
And
amen.
for now, it's a season. Trade up, Baba. Where would you about the local business? I'm small local businesses. They go there, they apply. This was so what is slightly because the most important thing that is the council, the revenue season, let's see talk. But we make someone else is a balance. So thank you very much.
Siyabonga chairman. Siyabonga chairman.
Move the report.
Mm.
Can we move the report?
Move.
On the 17th of December. Is there a seconder?
Yeah.
Is there any debate?
Move the report.
The report is moved. That's longer than I expected. Is it just leave? Oh, this is wrong. That's it. So it's just leave. Are there any applications for notices of leave? No notices of leave. Our meeting is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you.